Is it a board game or is it a lifestyle game? Past couple of vlogs, we've been exploring. I've been jumping into some of my favorite titles and looking at it from the perspective of how the industry has evolved, how the board gaming community has grown, and how those impulses have driven production. This kind of backing up a couple of days, this kind of started with this idea with Hero Quest. If you've been following my channel for any amount of time, you know I'm instantly sold on any type of dungeon crawler type board game, especially if there's a lot of miniatures. And we had that genesis with Hero Quest. And now, many, many years later, I've pushed this up to the archive. We're starting to hear news regarding a release, or at least the opening negotiations, Restoration Games, to do a re-imaging of Hero Quest. And the collective unconsciousness of Hero Quest fans has just been rejuvenated tremendously. And it's interesting to speculate and say, we might have that answer. If Hero Quest was made now, what innovations would it take while being true to the original Hero Quest? And in that evolvement, it's interesting how board games originally started as a condensation of war games. I mean, I have numerous old Avalon Hill titles. I love Web and Starship. The idea that it was you versus your opponent, head to head. A simplified, stratified wargaming system without the miniatures, usually the counters. And a real thing, one of the things with Web and Starship, why it really captured my imagination at the time, going back many years, was not only was it sci-fi space battles, but like it was a 3-player game. You had 3 alien empires fighting against each other. And that was like, whoa, 3 players at the time? Revolutionary. Things have evolved. And in that evolution, we saw this idea of board games moving away from 1 versus 1, now involving multiple players. We saw the evolution of 1 versus many, the overlord mechanic, to now where we are, where cooperative games are the thing, are in vogue. And I think that's great because everyone either wins or loses. And if the team wins, even if your character gets killed, you get to win. The AI of the game, the components, the cards, or in some cases, the app is what you play against. So it's been this navigation and this evolution. But a board game, so we're at this next jump right now, and this isn't even like a Kickstarter versus non-Kickstarter thing. Traditionally, it was, here's your board game. You picked it up. You put down your X amount of dollars at the time. You know, it's all relative. If I think I paid like $20 for Web and Starship. What would that be now? Like $120 with inflation. But the idea was you bought your board game and you were done and you were happy and it was good. Then we saw this evolution, and Fantasy Flight was king of this idea of expansions. So now you buy the game, and who doesn't love expansions? More content, more cards, more miniatures, to the point where you wouldn't just see 1 or 2 expansions or a side expansion. You'd see literally like 30, if we're looking at big box, small box, lieutenant packs, card packs, Descent, both first and second edition, and I'm massive fans of both editions, are just absolute king. But even with the expansions, the prices are a little bit high. There is production costs in terms of plastic and cardboard. The idea was, that's limiting. Well, those are board games. Now we're seeing the shift to lifestyle games. And a perfect example, Lord of the Rings, the card game. This idea that you buy the core. Well, first of all, you need 2 cores to actually build that first effective deck. And now they release more and more cards, living card games. Now, of course, this is nothing new. It's called Magic the Gathering. One of the greatest mistakes. I can admit this. I'll admit this right now. It'll be good to get it publicly out there. Because, you just got to release it. You got to let it go. And even after all these years, I don't hold my friend to it. But it's all good. I played Magic the Gathering way back in the beginning, in the Genesis, in the heyday, in the starting days of it. And even then, I was very, very focused in double sleeving everything. I mean, all of my cards, there was nowhere, everything was bulletproof. I won't even make mention of the cards that I had. And in playing Magic with my buddy Naps, we play back and forth. I mean, you didn't really have anyone else to play with. Talk about a sub-community, a basement-dwelling community. We played Magic for maybe a year and a half. Had multiples, bought in on everything, got out of control, got out of Magic. Naps gave me all of his cards, and I didn't have anyone to play with. Doing my war game thing. My buddy Adrian, I love you, buddy. He's like, I'm getting into Magic. And I'm like, cool, I've got some cards. I don't play anymore. It's all good. So I give him my cards. I think about a year later, he shows up, a brand new car. A nice, very nice German used car. And I'm like, cool, where'd you get this car? He's like, oh, I sold maybe half of your Magic cards and bought the car. And that's when I started to look, and I'm like, wow, this Magic thing actually is a thing. It's all good, but I say that because, yes, Magic, and to a lesser extent these other card games, even Pokemon and stuff, there was this idea of a living card game. But you knew what you were getting into pretty quick because it was competitive play, right? It's this competitive play. Board gaming was always operating under the illusion of, and it's all still good, Adrian, it is, for real, but board gaming operated under this illusion of like, you buy it, you're good, you're done, you're having fun with your friends, and Fantasy Flight has been the pioneer in this, but I see more and more things picking up. This idea of you get the core and then adventure paths and X packs and all these cards coming out and cycles. I mean, look at Lord of the Rings. And Lord of the Rings, in a good way, I play the packs, I play the adventures, I'm into the deck building. I mean, it's sucked away a lot of money, but it's also sucked away a lot of good time playing. So you're not getting something for nothing, but it is a lifestyle game in that you look forward to cycles. You try to complete cycles along the way. Whatever the current cycle is, you're engaged in the community, YouTube and forums to discuss tactics and optimal builds. In some ways, even if I divorce myself completely from greedy capitalism and smart business practices, it is a better way to play board games because not only do you have the fun of playing, but you have the instant excitement. It's not even FOMO. You have the instant excitement of meeting with other players real time online to discuss tactics and do playthroughs and strategize, and to constantly have that cycle going. That's kind of neat. That's kind of fun. So the difference between, and that line is blurring more and more, board games versus lifestyle games, and really seeing that shift away from core and some expansions to now you need at least 2 cores and no more expansions, but cycles to play in. At least it's not blind packs. At least it's not that you kind of know what you're getting. I think blind packs or WizKids is like notorious. That's like a short-term money fix. I think for long-term longevity, especially reprinting stuff, that might not be the best model. But in terms of evolution of board games, there is definitely a shift. There is definitely a shift in play.